So when we are talking about binge eating, we are talking about that really out of control, out of body experience of eating foods in ways that just really feels out of control. It feels mentally out of control. It's really physically uncomfortable for our bodies, and we don't know how to stop. And often we are caught in binging, dieting, restricting, binging, compensating, and really feeling shit about ourselves. Often some of this is done in secret. You might find yourself eating on the way between work and home, or sneaking out of sight when nobody's watching. And there can be a lot of reasons for this. But how I look at binge eating is that there's two components. And we're going to focus mostly on one of them in this series. And the reason for that is because I think this is the fundamentals. So when I talk about the two things, what I talk about is there is deprivation-driven eating, and then there is emotional eating, or true emotional eating. And sometimes we're trying to tackle deprivation-driven eating through tools that are more supportive for emotions. But if we don't heal the deprivation, we're not going to be able to really get through to, reduce and hopefully eventually eliminating binge eating altogether. And the reason for this is that we can't fight physiology. But I'd like us to start from the very beginning first, and that is to create some awareness. So I'm going to give you a tool today that you can take away, and I invite you to practice with this over the next couple of days to see what you find. So this is called the HALT chart. And the HALT is an acronym that stands for: am I hungry? Am I angry or anxious? Am I lonely? Or am I tired, or is it a treat? So how you're going to use this is that when you find yourself binging or reaching for food, even though you're not sure why you're eating, is to create a pause to check in with yourself. When you continue to eat or not, it's really not the point at this early part of the journey, right? It's just here to help you get to know what are the triggers from your binge eating. Maybe you already know. Maybe you're kind of going, I'm not sure, it just feels so automatic, it just feels so habitual. And by starting to bringing in some pausing or just slowing the process down and asking you this question: what is going on? Am I hungry? And of course, if you're hungry, it makes complete sense that you're reaching for food. And the best solution for that is going to be to meet that need with food. It's not going to be to try to override your physical hunger, because that is really not helpful when we're trying to heal the deprivation-driven eating. So if you find that you're reaching for food, and maybe in a way even with an amount that feels uncomfortable, maybe it is because you're hungry. So it's just to note that, right? And then we'll come back to that. Did you eat enough during the day? Has it been several hours since you had your last meal? Then of course it makes sense that you're going to be hungry, and the best way to meet hunger is with food. Maybe you notice that you're angry or anxious, and again, it can be very valid to use food as a way of distracting or soothing or numbing out. So I think as well, like sometimes by the act of eating and chewing, it can help to soothe our nervous system. But again, this is something that may work for you short term or in the moment, but over time, it might not be so helpful at all. So just note when you're reaching for food, are you angry or are you anxious? And what do you need that would be maybe more helpful for that? Maybe you're finding that you're eating because you're lonely. And again, we can use food to try to fill this heart space of loneliness, of lack of connection, and lack of sense of belonging anywhere. But over time, food can only meet that need temporarily. So again, if you're noticing that you're eating for loneliness, then what is it you need? Could it be something like reaching out to a friend? Could it be soothing yourself in some other way by taking care of yourself? What is it you need when you're feeling lonely? And really being kind and compassionate with yourself and allowing yourself to feel some of those quite painful emotions that comes with feeling loneliness. And again, it makes sense if you're reaching for food, but just knowing that the food can only do the job for the moment. It's not going to ever be able to connect us to other physical people, because that's not the job of food. But I do want to say, like, it does make sense if we're eating because we're feeling lonely, because food is comfort. And then, of course, the tea. Am I tired, or is it a treat? And eating for tiredness is pretty common. And I think we can look at this in two ways. So you might be tired because you're actually out of energy. And again, looping back to when was the last time you ate? Does it make sense that your body actually needs more fuel or more food to function? And sometimes, again, we're eating to distract ourselves from the tiredness that we're feeling. And maybe what we need is not more food, but what we need is a rest, a nap, taking a break. And another thing that I have often seen actually when people are eating because they need a break is when we're eating, we can take a legitimate break, whereas it's quite hard to take a break doing nothing. And then again, there's nothing wrong with this, but it might not be helpful if this is the only thing we do in order to take a break. And then, of course, there's the saying, is this a treat? And I don't think there's anything wrong with treats. I think food forms an important part of our pleasurable experience. But I do think that it's important to think about it. Does it feel like a reward when maybe you need something else? Maybe you do need that break or that nap, or just walking away from your computer doing something very different, or connecting with a friend or a loved one. So we can treat ourselves, and you can also notice if you are reaching for food and it feels like a treat. Are you enjoying it? Are you giving yourself permission to enjoy this experience fully without guilt or shame? So taking the HALT chart and start this process of really tuning in to see what is the trigger before you find yourself stuffing your face. So using the HALT chart is a beginning of a practice to start creating some more awareness around your experience. And it can take some time before you're able to maybe catch yourself, like at the beginning of the binge eating process, whereas you might be halfway through it, but it doesn't matter. You can still pause and check in and kind of go, well, what just happened? Even if you're at the end of the binge eating episodes and you're feeling uncomfortable, maybe there's still some space for reflection to see, how did I end up here? And noticing, did you eat? When was the last time you had food? Has it been several hours? Were you hungry? Or were you tired? Or were you just feeling some other emotion like anxiety or anger or frustration? And give yourself some kindness on this journey. The other thing that I'm asking you to do today as well, to take away from this video, is that we're going to start moving away from this all or nothing thinking, which is also very typical that I see in most of the people I work with, and I think something that I've seen in myself as well. It's that it's either all on or all off. It's either 110% sticking to the diet, or if there's one little slip up, then it's like, well, to hell with it, I might as well eating all the biscuits because tomorrow I'm not going to have any. And let's just keep us stuck in this pendulum between swinging from full-on binging to restriction on the other side. So and then I suppose the other thing as well, which is what we're going to do as an exercise, is to notice that, to taking off the times of the day where you're not binging and where you're eating regularly, so that you can see that actually over the course of the day, most of the times you're eating is not binge eating episodes, because our brains are hardwired for negativity. And that means that when we have a binge eating episode, we might feel like, well, the whole day was ruined and there's no point. And then that in itself can trigger follow on, because we're dealing with the shame and the guilt that comes from that. And then we eat some more to cope with those emotions. But what I'm asking you as well is to take the download, and what you're going to see is that there is 4 parts of the day. There is the morning, midday, afternoon, and evening. And what I want you to do is to, when you're going through part of the day and you don't have a binge eating episodes, just put a smiley face or a heart or something to mark this for yourself. And when you maybe have a binge eating episode, just leave that space blank. And you might see that over the course of a week, most of the times of the day, you're doing well. So that's what I'd like you to start with. And maybe this feels like a lot, maybe this is quite doable, but I do remind you to just be really gentle with yourself as you're navigating this. And I see you again really soon. Take care.